All right. Okay. What's cracking, y'all? I had to just make sure some stuff was proper. It has been a while, but your boy is back. More or less. In whatever condition we find him, he's here. This is actually, the music is a lot louder for me. Let me just... Howdy, y'all. You know, I always say howdy. I was born in Shreveport. I grew up in Northern Virginia, okay, which people consider to be the South. And I don't think that's true. I identify more with Southern sensibilities. So from a earlier age, I was saying y'all, and then it became kind of like a meme to myself. I feel like. Anyway, totally unimportant. What's going on? We're gonna talk about some stuff, and I just want to start this by saying the world right now is very is not doing well. Okay, you have all sorts of stuff. I even had a I even had the intention of talking about Gaza, which is a very important topic to me personally, just because genocides are disgusting. But I'm going to save that for another video because I need to be very specific and exact. And there's a Scientology aspect that I would like to introduce. Again, I platform. I choose on this topic to platform people who know more about this and how it relates to them more personally, because it's not about what I think. It's more about, there are other people who this is impacting directly, and I prefer, and that's why you'll see me repost more than I'll talk about it, because I live in a very different place. Okay, so I intend on actually bringing up an aspect of it, but I'm not going to do that today. Today I had a couple of topics to bring up, but let me catch up with the chat real quick. Actually, I saw hello, my fellow Thetans. What's up? Hey, Monday I sent H3 a super chat about Dr. Berg and your channel, but they didn't read super chats that day. And that is so convenient, isn't it? And that's so convenient because, let me tell you, they'll talk about Scientology when it benefits them and their initial drama. But I find it a little suspicious, a little suspicious that they tend to ignore actually discussing it. They'll breeze by it. What do they have to be afraid of? Let me see if I can. Oh, that's okay. Where is it? I need to. Sorry, guys. I'm setting up here. Still a little bit. They had a power outage at the end. Of course they did. That's L. Ron Hubbard at work from beyond the grave. I've thought about doing a super chat to them just to get my foot in the door, but I haven't had money like that in a while. I've had to get stuff that are actually better for good for me actually continuing to do work, my own work that I'm working on for the cause against Scientology, and also for you, because I have back pain. So, y'all are not going to believe this, but one of the best things I've ever done, and I consider it one of the best purchases I've ever made, I made recently. And I am going to show you what it is. Here, you guys ready for this? I'm sorry, guys. I gotta pay some bills here. All right. Guys, ready for this? All right. Watch this. What's happening? Is this room getting bigger? No. As a tall person, you really have to take care of your back. And that's why I bought a standing desk. They're incredibly cheap nowadays. And you can see me. You can see me in the back. Speaking of back pain, I literally have an inversion table from a few years ago. So last week, I made some videos about Chester Bennington being replaced by Emily Armstrong in Linkin Park. All right. Now these TikToks popped off. I'm not gonna lie, because I was hot on it. I was like, you got to be some kind of stupid to replace. And this was just, I mean, I come off very blunt a lot of the time, but you have to be kind of wild to replace a guy who took his own life, R.I.P., and had mental health issues and grew up with abuse and etc. Replace him in one of the most well-known bands in the world with someone who is so intimately connected with, from my opinion, a cult that considers mental health to be space alien souls attached to your body, therefore prompting you to make up mental illnesses and project them, or as they call dramatize that into the world, therefore being some kind of a nuisance to your progress. When, I mean, it's contradicted aspects aside, I was pretty hot on the subject, okay? So I made a couple TikToks. One of them, well, first I made one telling Emily Armstrong to go fuck herself, which I should have told Mike, that other guy, the guy who hired her, because, you know, he made the decision. I'm not even, and it had nothing to do, and a lot of people thought it had something to do with the band. I don't think it had anything to do with the band. And I said, it's not about the music. It's not about the band. It's about platforming a cult or a cultist who represents the cult. Because what's his name? Cedric Bixler, I think, said, just wait, they'll be handing out Scientology promotion at Linkin Park shows, which sounds like a joke, but I actually believe that they would do that 100%. But people got really upset at me. So a couple diehard Linkin Parkers, I don't know what they call themselves, had the I guess learned something about Scientology, and they decided to get not my insulting video removed, but the video after that, where I describe why Emily Armstrong being an ally is not, in fact, why it's in fact contradictory based on her religious beliefs. They don't like it when I use the C word. So, so it was literally just me being like, it makes no sense because in 1951, L. Ron Hubbard in Elizabeth, New Jersey, developed a program based on Dianetics that was essentially designed to convert gay people to be straight people. Because in L. Ron Hubbard's brain, in his rotten cerebral cortex, he came up with this idea that, it's some exaggeration of some painful experience, and if, engrams, blah, blah, blah. It's really not important. And it's honestly so hyperbolic to sit here and explain it to you. There is a manual that he wrote that I will see if I can find. Let's see. Video pics. I believe it's in this one. Yes, it is it's called A Brief Survey of Research Projects and Preliminary Results, Dianetic Processing. It's an old book that was never really taken anywhere. He basically just said, it's too hard, so I'm just not going to try. Which makes sense because being gay is, have we found in the modern era, not in fact a choice, but part of something, part of you, if you are in fact gay. But either way, I found it incredibly entertaining. I actually talked about this in my Scientology TikTok review. Oh, what's up, Alex? Apostate Alex in the chat. A true... I don't want to... the word crusader is so, messed up in my brain because Scientologists use it so constantly, and I really hate using all the cringy, repetitive stuff. But he is a crusader. He's a liberator in a sense, because he's actually doing things, and I appreciate what he's doing. We just had a conversation a couple weeks ago. You can check that out. Please go to his channel, subscribe. Yeah, so it's been wild. I know you're all wondering where I've been. It's, if I could reduce the issue from its component parts, it's been tricky on my mental health, but I'm still here. So clearly something has gone right. I've been working on some projects. I've been doing some odd jobs, trying to get some money because it doesn't fall off trees. I've been doing a lot, and a lot of nothing as well, because relaxing is sort of sometimes more important than doing something. I've been playing. I before this stream, I tested whether or not my computer would run Space Marines 2, because I've been playing a lot of Space Marines 2. And I would say if we want to watch a very blurry gameplay of that, then I would have, but I might not. Am I open to answering questions? Yes, I am. Sound too low. Can y'all hear me? Testing. How about now? Well, turn up your volume. Have you tried that? That's step one. You do the first part. I'll do the second part. But yeah, it's been crazy. I'm working on something kind of secret, but I think it has potential personally. It's something very complicated, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to keep y'all in suspense. But I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to use it. I'm excited to make it happen. And I think you'll be excited for it too, once you see it, once you understand it. But until then, question, what projects am I working on? Next question. I'm working on projects that I think are important. How about that? One specifically. You know. All right, should I have background music? I don't know, man. Maybe I just... Here, let me see if I can do this. That's nice, but it's very loud, and I can't turn it down on my end. That's going to be a tricky one, champs. Am I going to be a daddy? No. Thank fuck. That sounds like a lot of money. I will not be fathering children. I'll say that to clarify the question. Have I seen the leak from Rinder's blog? The leak? I mean, stuff's leaking every day. Do you know what the title is? Is it recent? Is it the Thursday Funnies with the minions? Alex, watch yourself. Watch yourself. This is live. I got in trouble for thirst trapping too early on, so I gotta in trouble with my reputation. It invites certain attention that I'm almost never prepared for from people who I almost never expect. I'm being vague today, but let's be real. Can't give it all away for free. You know what I'm saying? But on L. Ron Hubbard, on Church of Scientology's link to federal government agencies, I mean, the patterns in Scientology's past of infiltrating the government, like one of the things that I find very interesting about Scientology, and I always found it interesting, I think the first time I can say that I really recognized it was doing the Purif at Flag, okay? Because when you do the purification rundown, it's the sweat program, for those of you who don't understand. When you do this at Flag, you have a routing form, which is, I mean, when you do anything, anywhere in Scientology, you have a routing form. But at Flag, the routing forms are chunky. When you go, you have to see a specific doctor at a specific clinic, and this doctor has a clear bracelet and is obviously a Scientologist. I would wager a Sea Org member. I don't know the guy. I've met him a couple times. He gave me an evaluation for the Purif, and then later he also gave me an eval for, I got an EKG when I was going to go on the free wins to do competence and leadership and pay $2,500 to do manual labor on the free wins, which I did. I didn't pay it, but it was paid for. I think Alex might be onto something. Listen, we've talked about this, all right? Y'all some thirsty ones, but I think we've had this conversation before. There's got to be a lot of money on the line. I'm not saying it's a no. I'm saying no one has met my price range. And if y'all some brokies, just say so. Y'all can't afford me. Y'all want me to take my shirt off, but no one's offering me what I'm worth. It's just disappointing, really. That's all I have to say about that. A Sea Org doctor. Yeah. So, totally sidetracked. So my perception of Scientology placing individuals in positions where they are trained to not identify with Scientology directly sort of recontextualizes for me the reality that Scientology can infiltrate. They have in the past, and just because they said they aren't now doesn't mean they aren't, period. They infiltrated the FBI in the 80s, and L. Ron Hubbard's wife went to jail in lieu of, instead of David Miscavige, who was more likely at fault. Dare I say degree? Elysia's in the chat. This is what Dana researches. Dana, I haven't talked to her in a while. We haven't talked since honestly, she thinks we disagree on a lot. I'm just not a conspiracy guy. I'm more of I tend to these days become less interested in things that I can't control or things that are too nebulous to draw these lines. Like these lines, if she wants to draw the lines, that's totally fine. I had concern with her being abused by a psychopath on the internet who is just seemingly the squirreliest. Oh, I have so many words that I'm not going to use. I'm not going to talk about drama, but I had a particular issue with the person, with her abuser, and the disgusting nature at which she was taken advantage of. And so she thinks that we're like polar, like it's like enemies of enemies, right? That we're on some condition. I have nothing. We had a misunderstanding, I think, in the beginning when we first talked, and she really didn't like me, and I was like, okay. And then we kind of met back up in the middle with the with you know who. So it's just not. I'm not interested in conspiracies. I'm more interested in things that we've dealt with already. Like I'll watch a good JCS or a true crime or what is it? Explore with Us. But yeah, I'm not going to say any. I'm not going to say too much about all that because that's well, it's very distracting, isn't it? And we don't want to give anybody undue attention. I've totally forgotten the plot. Right. 1980s, L. Ron Hubbard, David Miscavige infiltrated Scientology. I do not, like, they have the potential. There could be Sea Org members in the government right now. I don't think that is why Scientologists are very weird in how they approach situations, and usually if they are exposed or brought a lot of attention to them, they have to be very intentional with what they say because they know that what they believe is insane to other people. It's called out reality, as it were. So that doesn't surprise me at all. What would surprise me, and I mean would definitely surprise me, is if Emily Armstrong, like all these copium-addicted people in my TikTok comments want, is that if I'd be surprised if Emily Armstrong is not a Scientologist. And we're going to look. So first of all, I'm sure a handful of you have already they pay people to do look, whoever they got in there, they're doing a really shitty job because Scientology's reputation is the worst it has been since its existence began. So delaying the inevitable, it may be a positive for them, but I don't see it as working in their favor. So a lot of heat. I actually also heard that Emily was considering leaving Linkin Park due to the response, which told me two things. One, she still hasn't talked about Scientology, period. And she did mention in a comment something that I'll cover later. But two, she would rather avoid talking about Scientology. I'm sorry. She would. Let me say that again. She would rather leave Linkin Park than say a single negative or a single thing about Scientology. And I've been hearing blind items about Sabrina Carpenter being approached by Tom Cruise, by her aunt, who is a very well-known Scientologist, who's friends with my parents, Nancy Cartwright. So that's an interesting little 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you know? Like, it's so funny. You know, like I'm 3 degrees from Sabrina Carpenter, which is kind of cool. But even when Sabrina Carpenter was asked if she was a practicing Scientologist, she said no. And they're still trying to get her to be the face. Like, nothing bad is going to happen if she says, oh, I don't practice it anymore. Like, nothing bad's going to happen to her. But all these, like, you know, losers in my comments are like, You'll never be a true Linkin Park fan. It'll never happen for you. You just go die on a bridge. Jump off a bridge and die. And then I'm like, I'm not a Linkin Park fan. This isn't doing the damage you want it to. Is it true Melania Trump nearly joined Scientology in the early 2000s? I heard that somewhere. Well, it wouldn't surprise me. But almost is an almost. Scientology doesn't care about their reputation like it used to. They have tax exempt status, and that's what matters. I think nothing in Scientology happens without an instruction to do so, whether by an authority figure or the policy itself. So, although I understand what you mean, you know, the state of Scientology now is directly dictated by its leader, and their reputation will mean everything when more people have heard about it than not. Their tax-exempt status is going to mean a whole lot of nothing when they are proving to be a public safety concern. Now, I'm just as frustrated as all of you that no one has talked about it, or that not enough people are talking about it. But again, it's a process. You know, people have to realize that it's not Scientology. Scientology's not going to come out of the woodwork to, you know, sue you. And if they do, they're not going to win. They haven't won like a jury trial in like over 20 years. I just think people are still in that grasp of, you know, the fear behind Scientology, because they do attack with litigation, but and they will send, private investigators to find you and find what you're doing, and they'll hack your computer if they can. They'll look into your social media. Hell, when I first made my first TikTok, my private Facebook, my original Facebook that I had since I was like 12, was banned, deleted, gone, finito. So, because I had most of my friends were on there were Scientologists. Are you interested in grassroots style activism? Just curious. That's a loaded question. And am I familiar with the anti-science? Bro, you gotta chill with this. I said no drama, and you want to talk about all some shit made up in your brain. Let's be real, dog. You can come up with a more interesting, more poignant question. I'll answer it, but You're being too vague, well, have you thought about the Rothschilds and they're involved? Like, the fuck am I going to do about the Rothschilds? Like, I'm also not going to talk about drama, period. Because it does not help. I don't give a shit. I'm going to talk about Scientology. So today I woke up and I saw, where is it? The type of activism, to give you a single answer, a type of answer. The type of activism I'm interested in is a bit more of a broader scale, broader scope. I like to think that I understand people, and I'm very good at picking up on patterns that people project. So my kind of activism has more to do with, I don't want to say social engineering, but I want to say like, they intimidate people because they believe it works. But every action has a consequence. And if you can predict, if you have a bad person who you know is doing bad things, and you just watch that person do what they do, and you kind of get to know why they like it, what they're doing it for, you can better anticipate the consequences of their actions. And it shows their motivations. And you can look into what causes said motivations, et cetera, et cetera. It's sort of like a puzzle. And when you put it together, you can see sort of where the weak points are. And if you dig into those weak points, et cetera, maybe you pull a pin there, maybe you add a block there, and suddenly it's not so stable as it was. Suddenly this person is being seen more and being confronted more for his actions. It's a process, and it's not one I can easily describe. But activism is acting on your feeling of, in my opinion, acting on your feelings of injustice or empathy. It's the doing of the things, and sometimes it's more public than others, but I think the result should speak for itself. And I don't like to give a lot of promises until I have something to show, right? I don't like to put the cart before the horse. But yeah, I'm trying to oh, here we go. So I woke up this morning to this. So first, Chester Bennington, who was the previous singer of Linkin Park, his son came out and denounced this move, right? From Linkin Park, because obviously it was a pretty bad move. And so Chester Bennington, who empathized with his father, and he said that what's his name? I always forget his name every time I'm not looking at it. Somebody posted it here. God, it's probably here. Mike Shinoda. God, that guy could have a more forgettable name. Mike Shinoda, he called him senile and deranged, and now Chester Bennington's mom said that she feels like she was betrayed. Okay, which that's rough. Like, you're not going to just explain that one away. All right. So it says this is the Variety article. After Chester Bennington's Chester Bennington's son criticized Linkin Park for bringing Emily Armstrong as the new vocalist. The late singer's mother has spoken out against the band, claiming that she feels betrayed and that they are trying very hard to erase the past. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Bennington's mother, Susan Eubanks, which is, I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce it, explained that the band had promised to notify her if there were any plans to continue as a group. I feel betrayed, she said. They told me if they were ever going to do something, they would let me know. They didn't let me know, and they probably knew it wasn't going to be very happy, or that I wasn't going to be very happy. I'm very upset about it. Now, do you have to ask someone's mom before you start a new band? I don't think so. But I think the fact that they just ignored her completely, I think, Mike, I have some very strong opinions on this situation after having thought about it for a while. I don't have strong opinions about Linkin Park as a band. I'd say my opinions are more like logic and like let's take what he's saying at face value, and let's also say let's pay attention to what he's ignoring, because there are very public voices who are directly addressing him that are saying certain things, and he'll respond, but only in a way that addresses certain like seemingly approved topics, you know, which to me, because I'm just, you know, I'm like, okay, so they read what was wrong, and they said, okay, we know we can't talk about this because we know that this would lead to a worse reputation, to say anything to associate with, and I'm talking about Scientology, obviously, because that's the only subject none of these fucking people have addressed. And it's kind of insane. Like I feel like I was taking crazy pills, and people were like, there's no proof she's a Scientologist. And I said, well, there's more proof that she is a Scientologist than that she is not. Just because she hasn't, you know, talked about Scientology, or she hasn't, like, it's just so weird. Like, you'd think the absence, for people who have no idea how Scientology works, they just assume and they project this insecurity and this concept that the absence of proof is proof itself, which we know is illogical. And I used my father as an example because I have seen him be one of the most dedicated Scientologists. I mean, honestly, I've seen more dedicated Scientologists, but for the sake of the conversation, you know, he gives them millions of dollars. That's dedication enough. And but he never talks about it publicly. And the few times that I feel like we've seen him recently talk about it publicly, like my sister reposted an article from some made-up newspaper that looked like it was written by AI with a broken website, and I talked about it. And when I talked about it, I said in one of my earlier live streams, like, it was the most deranged. It was like Dr. Berg talking about why he visited Scientology. And he was like, everyone told me it was a cult, so I had to check it out. And it was just the most dumb, like, thoughtless, AI-sounding bullshit. But, like, my sister reposted it. So was she looking? Did she see this? And after I had my live about a week, maybe, well, a little less than a week after that, the website and the article, well, I think the website was still there. The article did not exist. The article was gone because it was so, in my opinion, embarrassing that you really can't, like, it was really hard to quantify for me. So I'm saying they didn't just ignore her, though. They had a fallout a few years back. The band and Chester's mother. Is there more to this? Eubanks explained that she had bumped into Linkin Park members Mike Shinoda and Joe Hahn over the years, but neither mentioned a reunion. She said that at one point Shinoda did reach out, but they were going to release new songs that had Bennington's vocals. I lost it. But she was blindsided by the announcement of Armstrong joining the group. I found out about Emily Armstrong joining the band on Google, as we do. When I go to Google and look for something, the first thing that often pops up is Linkin Park, which for the lead singer's mom, I can imagine that's a hot targeted. that's some purple text in the recents for you. We have an announcement. The whole week they were at the top. If you go to enter anything into Google. She says she turned on the group's live stream performance when they announced Armstrong and Bennington's replacement earlier this month. Not on purpose. I thought her singing, I don't even remember what it was she was singing because I didn't want to hear it. It was the moment. It was just a moment, but it was her. I'm just going to say it, screeching her way through a very high note. I think a lot of people, I think that's the clip that went viral is the one audio, the crawling in my skin. And it was like, it was bad. It was bad. Not saying she's again, I have no opinion on her music because that's not what matters to me. But it was very. It wasn't a good one. Listen, I was 9 once, just like everybody else. All right. I remember listening to Linkin Park in middle school, being like, "This bops," and then obviously the Black Parade came out. I switched gears a little bit. I started listening to Linkin Park a little less, but I digress. Like, I don't think about it as like, oh, replacing his legacy or whatever. Like, 2 of the other band members are gone too. On top of Chester no longer being around. So people have also called it Mike Shinoda and Friends because it's not, it's distancing itself further and further from classic Linkin Park. But again, I don't care. If his mom is telling you that this is a bad move, you should probably listen. You should probably do something. Eubanks recalled that Shinoda once told Bennington that Linkin Park's songs would sound better with a female vocalist, and that Bennington told her that if he were to leave the group, they would follow through in hiring a woman to sing the band. I don't think there's anybody in the world who has that same voice, she said. And when I heard that, I was just so repelled that no, they're trying to do exactly what Chester did, but they're not succeeding at it. Her comments regarding Linkin Park followed mixed reactions. Cedric Bixler Zavala, and his wife Chrissy Bixler. And going into the more apt, more public issue of her being friends with Danny Masterson, which I can promise you, if he got a not guilty verdict, she would still be hanging out with him. And I mean this because from the people I know who were around that area, he's kind of like a well-known predator, Danny, and his friends would be naive to ignore. I think his whole group, the Donkey Punch Bunch or whatever, Donkey Punch Bunch or whatever. All I'm saying is, wait, what happened? Yeah, it's just, it's rough. It's a rough one out there. So I got a lot of people. One guy told me I should join Chester, which I was just like, I just responded with like, you want to say what you want to say? Come on, big dog. It's crazy that the chat doesn't just repopulate when I switch scenes. Anyway, there was something else that I wanted to talk about. Let me figure this out. I mean, if you have questions, now's a great time. I would love to answer questions. unless they are about salacious things, in which case some of y'all crazy. I read every DM I get. So, everyone. Yeah, that's right. So all y'all who think you're slick, like, oh, he just ignored it. I'm watching y'all. I don't read all my YouTube comments, but I read most of my comments otherwise. Because YouTube is brutal. YouTube is just a cesspool. TikTok is an even filthier cesspool, although it's easier to weed out people. Do you have to pay to ask serious questions? You can just ask whatever. I don't need you to. Yeah, I don't need you to. You don't have to donate. But I'll just tell you if I don't want to answer the question. Emily's statement was vague at best. She tried to say something by literally saying nothing. Literally. She didn't even say Danny's name, which to me is bananas. Because, it prompts someone to be like, who is she accused of defending? And then they have to look it up. So she shot herself in the leg. So, Steve, you asked a question, why is grassroots organizing loaded? Because grassroots activism is when ordinary people take a collective action to spark a change. I don't see how that's different than what is happening now. I think you get enough angry people in a room, depending on if they're all angry at the same thing, they will eventually get there. One could only hope. Yeah, it's a general term. So I mean, yes, I agree, but it wasn't a specific enough question. That's why I called it loaded. The fact that she didn't say Danny's name is what made me, which is what made him think that she's still deep in Scientology. Her mom is in OSA. Emily Armstrong was born into the cadet org. Okay. And the fact that she stayed, and there is something to be said about her having famous friends. I mean, the clout, or as Scientologists would call altitude, of being associated with high up members in Scientology is something that is very, I'm sure you could imagine whatever you can imagine as the most cliche example of nepotism and clout exists within the Scientology structure. I feel like it's, again, it's hard to describe, but I was a nobody in Scientology until my father started giving a lot of money, and then I became known as Dr. Berg's son. And that got annoying, but again, I didn't really have any I wasn't relating to these people. I wasn't actually talking to these people every day. But it's just such an automatic association for them. They're like, if you give money to Scientology, or if your parents are high up in their arranged, I'll say, structure of hierarchy, you are automatically given this leeway and this attention because your family flows power to Scientology. Steve, I already said I wasn't talking about drama. So we're gonna move on. Wait a minute. Yeah, Elysia, you heard it here first. I've already talked about it. Anyone who isn't a Scientologist will not hesitate to tell you they're not a Scientologist. Doesn't matter. She won't say is because she ain't saying she isn't telling. Telling is its own separate word. Yeah, that's the point. That is the point. Do I read all of my W? Well, I read your W. 3 points towards the sky. Thank you. God, what was I going to talk about? I had this whole thing. I thought about just doing a stream where I go through my TikTok likes, but I would get copyright claimed pretty immediately because the music. Have I done research or reading into the history of Scientology protesting? Okay. Dog. I don't think you've ever been on this. I don't think you've ever interacted with me before. I think you should go back. Like, what? I'm struggling to understand the purpose of your questions, as they're so mundane. Like, a little patronizing, also. Like, okay, Elysia, a lot simpler. What's my favorite thing to do? To do living after growing up in Scientology. Keeping things to myself. That's a fun one. Not bullying myself for playing video games or being a human being, having human emotions. That's a good one. I'm very into movies. I'm very into cinema. I have a couple. I've dabbled with the idea of doing some movie reviews. But I'm not like I'm not like a cinephile. I'm not like one of those snooty folk. I just like movies, and yeah. I mean, I'm not a very complex dude when it comes to like my interests. Just wanted to see if you would read my W. If we message email and you do not hear back, is that intentional? Probably, but not because it depends on what you say, but probably. Or I'm just in a bad mood. If I catch your email at the wrong time, I usually respond if they're like germane or if they are meant with, goodwill. Just out of like, you're allowed to ask me stupid questions, but you're not entitled to a perfect answer, And also, I've been asked to like talk about my life story so many times. I think, like, I don't know how people do it. I don't know how celebrities, like, if I was in movies and they put me on that chair, with those interviews where like they just sit there and then they like bring in all the reporters one after another, like that would get old real fast for me. So I just, I'm a little more rigid about, if you're actually curious, if you're actually interested, I've talked about many of these things, and I prefer in a lot of cases that you go to other creators that I've spoken to, especially in the podcast area, because I don't have a podcast, because that would be doing a podcast. Like, I can barely stream by myself. Doing a podcast, that's so much work. And like, you know, what would I then I'm just making Scientology like a 24/7 job, which capitalizing on my trauma is not exactly where I thought my life would go, and there's not a lot of capital involved. So it's sort of a double-edged sword, because although it cuts one way, it very easily cuts the other. And but yeah, we need more white men doing podcasts. Yes, I, a straight white man, will very eagerly break the mold by starting a podcast. What is my favorite movie? That's an easy one. That's Wayne's World. Number one comfort film. Perfect movie. So simple. So genuine. You know. I love it. Top 3 favorite films? Wayne's World, RoboCop, and a secret third thing that I can't... Oh, you know, I'll throw it in there because I just recently watched it. True Legend, which is a martial arts movie. I'm not sure many of you have probably seen, but I highly recommend it. True Legend is, in my opinion, one of the best martial arts movies behind, like, let's say The Raid or The Raid 2, or anything Tony Jaa has done. I mean, martial arts movies, that's a whole other topic. Which RoboCop? The original RoboCop. The good one. Am I working on a screenplay? I have a lot of ideas, guys. 1 second. Ah! I got notebooks, okay? Did I just... Oh, wait. Sorry, guys. I F11'd. I got notebooks. I'm working on stuff. This isn't even all of them, which is disgusting. I have I've been sort of dabbling at this anthology series I would like to make, where it's like Black Mirror, but it's just visually, it's just putting into film the different whole track incidents I ran, like like in Scientology, that you go past life. I have a vivid imagination, so when I was in Scientology, I had convinced myself that these incidents were real, and that they had actually happened, and that millions, hundreds of thousands of years ago, I was doing X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. They were very detailed, and I found them to be very dramatic. So one of the ways I've been sort of, dealing with my mental health is writing things down, journaling, what have you. Part of that is I'm sort of like turning it into an anthology. To the best of my memory, I've forgotten so much, but they're very dark. They are very dark. There's a lot of brutal, like, I'd probably put it to film. I don't know if I could make it into a book. That sounds a lot less entertaining for me. I want you to see it how I saw it, in my head, sitting in that chair. Leading no credence to Scientology, because all they did was ask me to look, and I came up with these stories, and I was like, oh my god, this explains why I'm so edgy. But instead, it's just I had a vivid imagination. When I realized that I could do it outside of session and just make something up, I wasn't then just going to give all of that to what? Body thetans? Making up my past life memories? Like, that's stupid. I just have an overactive imagination. Do you think if enough people learn about Church of Scientology, it will end? That's a good question. That's a great example of a good question. Simple, classic, timeless. Yes, but I think my pessimism sort of gets in the way here. I don't think a majority of people really have it in their space. You know, people are living their own lives, and one of the things I had to grapple with was like the more passionate I got about this topic, the more angry I got at other people for not listening. And what I came to learn is everyone you see outside in your house, outside of your house, on the street, driving cars, every car that you see has a sentient person. Well, not every car, apparently self-driving now, but you get what I'm saying. Like, everywhere you see a person, that person is living a whole entire life, just like you. But you can't project your experience onto them. Like, people are suffering everywhere. And I think, yes, Scientology is a dangerous cult that I think there's like a nuance to Scientology that I think makes it more dangerous than the average, religious group. But I would say for the most part, you got to let people reach for that empathy. People will fight you sometimes if they, oh, why aren't you talking about all religions or just Scientology? And I'm like, what a reductive way. It's a reductive response, but I expected a response. I expected this different, perfect, empathetic response, but you have to really engage with people. You really have to find out what level, where they're at, and then hand them Scientology as an issue where you think it fits. For let's say if I was going to go to like a church and like a Christian church and talk about Scientology, I, for instance, would talk about the dangers that cults inflict upon religions. I'm not speaking to someone. The C word, again, cult, is a dirty word for a lot of religious people, and I get why, but you have to define it. You have to separate it from what they're doing so that they can empathize. Because once it gets too close to home, like I could even pitch why Scientology is bad to Mormons, although Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Scientologists have that little bond where they like to hang around each other, validate each other. Especially Jehovah's Witnesses. They're just basically copying Scientology at this point. Steve, I saw one of your questions about whether or not I'm spiritual. And again, I'd consider myself to a degree spiritual, but it's very complicated. It's very complex, very nuanced, very, I like the second you say that you're spiritual, I'm going to have 16 different missionaries in my DMs being like, my book can save you. Trust me. The Lord blesses all of us. And I'm like, I'm sure he does. And that's great. Not really my, my views on it are very personal. what if taxing Scientology and other religions could alleviate suffering? Why not tax them all and pay for universal health care? Better question. Or well, here's a twist, because that's, I mean, you're right, but that's, churches don't exist for long when they're being taxed. Like, so the way I like to think about that is, like, instead of just telling Scientology that they're abolished and martyrizing them, I'm pretty sure that's the way to say that. You know, when you rip something away from them, from a cult too quickly, they become very zealous. They become very victim oriented, even though victims shouldn't exist in Scientology per policy. Per like the text, it's like, you know, victimhood for me and not for thee, right? I would say instead, you have Scientology and the government. In between that, you just have a regulatory body that understands the differences between cults and religions, and have that as like a evidence-based, educated panel of people who simply require that these groups, all religious entities in the United States, and I think everywhere, but I live here, so because this is already happening in other countries, where you have to prove materially by benefiting to the community that you are worth tax exemption, and that value should be high. It should be extremely high, because the money, the tithe, all of that is, the tax exemption is only there because, the government is like, it trusts these churches to take care of their own communities. So it takes the burden off of the government from having to put that money in. You just say, well, you take care of your community. Scientology does fuck all for the community. Zilch. Not a thing for the community, but create waste by handing out pamphlets that are going to end up in the trash and on the floor of sporting events. So, I'm suffering a structure, a body of knowledge that is designed to cause the suffering of one class of people to benefit another class, will inherently seek suffering to meet its ends. But in my opinion, religions, I just don't feel like carry that burden of proof these days. Like, we're finding out and developing and enriching our lives and our culture by these things that we can actually see. And I think that your spirituality should be breathed into, your enthusiasm for your religious beliefs should be breathed into life by your actions and giving. The Sikhs, for example, I learned very recently, incredibly, beneficial to their communities, because it's like in their scripture to like feed people who are hungry, and like, they have these massive, like, I don't know what to call it, cookouts, basically, where they have this whole, they just feed anyone who needs it free. And it's like it's just one example of something simple. Like, you've never in your life seen a Scientology do a food drive. I've seen toy drives which ambiguously go here and there, but it's like, Tiffany Esty or Tiffany McGee or Tiffany Elizabeth or whatever, the chicken apple sausage TikTok girl who does the food plates with the cottage cheese. I don't know if you've heard about her. I talked about her a while ago, and I exposed her for being a Scientologist because I think, because she's selling these extremely shady products that, and her business practices are really weird. So I just think that people should be aware that you're giving money to someone who will take a portion of your money and give it to Scientologists. Scientology has done food drives outside of Los Angeles? Of course they have, because that's where the cameras mostly are. The Blue Building, yeah, you want to look good outside there, but there's no doctrine in Scientology that details this. And that would probably be the only place outside of maybe some foreign Church of Scientology that is less pressured by OSA to just get money, than they are to spend it on things like, because Scientology sees money as power, period. So if they can easily reach you, if an OSA mission can easily get to you, or an INT mission, or whatever, and put that pressure on you to make the money, and I've seen it with my eyes, they don't give a shit about anything else. And that's the culture in the org. If you've been a staff member, you know how depressing it is when you don't meet your GI target and you're sitting there on a Thursday afternoon and you know you're going to be there till like 11, and it starts at 6:30. So you're going to be there forever, and everyone's depressed and they're all getting yelled at, and we're reading these passages and we're just begging for the time to pass so that we can just move the fuck on. But we have to, but it's part of the policy. We have to be berated for down stats. What I mean power in a literal sense. My point is, it's not a simple issue, but it should be. And you can't expect everyone to understand where you're coming from right away, which is why I'm it's more amusing when people skip over my point and go right to personal attacks, because that kind of tells me that I'm pinching a nerve there. I'm touching on something that makes them feel very insecure. And instead of talking with me about it, they just say, you look like a woman. And I'm like, cool. That didn't answer my question, but or that wasn't germane to the topic. It's like, okay, thank you. As long as it's a pretty one. As long as I'm beautiful. Like, that's what that looks like. You think I look like a woman? Like, I mean, people who are usually telling me that are people who use like transphobic shit as a weapon. So, kind of projecting. It's a little sus calling me a woman. Like, why? You like me like that? What kind of woman? You know what I mean? Must find the helper people. There's a lot of toxicity online. Must find the helper people. Yeah. Maybe it's a translation issue, but I got it. Helper people, they're very helpful. But it's the same thing with like optics, like in Scientology, that in the PTSSP course, I mean, and I have the most fun when I'm talking to a Scientologist who's defending Scientology publicly on the internet, because they've more than likely only like gently brushed past Scientology as a subject matter, and they've only started like the introductory routes at the very bottom of the bridge. And I empathize, honestly, because they believe that what they're reading is helpful. And don't trust people who are toxic. That could be helpful for someone who doesn't know. Or don't spend all your money. Take in more money than you're spending. Like, these are what literally don't yell at your kids. Try to communicate with your kids. Well, although there is a caveat with that. I'm just giving examples of like the shit you learn at the beginning, which is like, you have more power than and we can unlock it. Like, people join these groups for what they are promising, and what anyone can cling to something that promises good, but handing out like 20-year-old pamphlets that say drugs are bad isn't curing the world of drugs. It isn't guaranteeing that children won't be influenced by drugs. It is a surface level benefit that they ride to the very end, that they just take one part of what they do and just absorb as much credibility as they can imagine in their brains. And it's really sick. Like Youth for Human Rights. Give me a break. The most I know about the Youth for Human Rights is they use a document they did not create. And it's just promoting the Declaration of Human Rights as a document, which is great. But Scientology has said nothing, zero, about the current genocides, plural, going on throughout the world. So I think they don't really give a shit about human rights because they have a stake in any side who wants to benefit them, right? You know, it's a divisive topic. Mr. Rogers calls them helpers. Okay, yeah, that's fair. R.I.P. the goat. Do you think making videos about Scientology helps prevent Scientology from growing? I think it continues the conversation. And I think when people stop talking about it, well, we'll run out of people who are interested in listening. You know, not everybody's going to dig back into the past and watch all the videos. And so you have to talk about it. And when I talk about it to people who I'm sure have heard the Xenu story 1,000 times, I'm not speaking to them. I'm speaking to whoever's listening. You know what I mean? I mean, that's why people don't stay around when I talk about it. They want something about like Tom Cruise, or they want something about Sabrina Carpenter. They want something about Linkin Park, you know? But when I'm actually talking about Scientology and like the mechanics, or like, God forbid I talk about anything personal, of my own personal interests. It's just, I'd say my pessimism gets in the way of guarantees, but I think there's another route that we haven't truly explored. And I'm working on something that I think will perhaps give people more of something to do about Scientology. And it'll be done when it works. So I'm excited about the future, for once. And I think it's important that you don't cling too tightly to the salacious aspects. You just stick with the bare facts. Like A, human trafficking. B, the overt motivator sequence. People being blamed for the abuse that they receive, right? It's very simple to explain why Scientology is bad, but finding enough people who have it in their space to listen is how do you contact them? How do you get their attention? And you could do any sort of things that are, I think there are more impressive and definite ways and positive ways to get people's attention than we've been trying. So, Steve, I've already said too much, honestly. I really I gotta keep it close to my belt, you know how it goes. Those pamphlets have been sitting in dank and musty basement filled with cockroach poop and stains. How does that help human rights? Honestly, they haven't changed the promo in years. And all they do about it, like promo, it's just printed and just handed out. Like most of it's mailed, honestly. So most of it is ending up as garbage anyway. We never really received a lot of letters back. I don't think I ever got a letter back from someone, and I wrote hundreds of letters. One of the most boring things, I mean, some people liked it. I really found it just infuriating. You contact the ex-Mormons and ex-JWs too. Why only focus on Scientology? Because it's a different leaf of the same branch, the same tree with the same roots. It's the same intent. When they fall from the tree, they hit the ground. Okay? Doesn't matter how far they blow, they all land in the same place. It just depends on how angry, how passionate people become, you know? You incentivize through, in this case, abuse, people to be righteously passionate, like it's an exchange, right? Like you're however passionate you were for the group, if you feel betrayed, you know, you're more likely, I'm not going to say everybody, because a lot of people just don't, they're just so exhausted they just want to rest. But some people, and you'll find ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and ex-Mormons too. Ex-Mormons I've spoken to more of, but and I do plan on actually interviewing an ex-Mormon on this channel pretty soon. So that's good. And I like, it's the same thing, but I know more about Scientology. So I have a better chance of impacting Scientology. It's just a very simple. Yeah, if I got a letter from them, I'd move. They'll find you. They do. They update. There is something called the Addresso, or the Addo system. And it gets updated. And they have a whole bunch, like there's a file on every person who has ever at any point since this org's creation, this specific church's existence, has ever interacted in any capacity with Scientology. They have a file on you. Okay? There are two kinds of files. Well, there's a few different kinds of files, but I'm referring to a Addresso folder, which is just all the letters, all the correspondence. I've seen letters when I was on staff in Atlanta. I saw letters written in like 1972, and they're disintegrating as I touch them. These pieces of paper turning to ash in my hand, and like they'll I was part of my job too. You know, you look into people, you call them, you say, hey, do you still live here? Or like, you know, you send a letter or you look them up. It's gross, but and very predatory, but you're made to do it. You know, it's supposed to be normalized to you. Same thing with call-in. Although with call-in, it's basically leaving voicemails for 40 minutes, calling the same 10 people who show up to the same event every time there's an event, and they just milk them for money with these pointless fundraisers. It's wild. I'll tell you that. I don't think we can rest until the country is a better place than it is right now. It's a collaboration with ex-Mormons, Ethicate. Yes. Like, and I've thought of that. Like, ex-members of these cults are the most powerful people to do this. And I don't mean everybody, because personalities, you know, anyone can join and leave a group, okay? And I think the content of their character is easily described by the substance of their action, and what they say and what they don't say. And these things, you know, they're allowed to be human beings, first of all, because, I mean, I used to think I was good Lord. I used to be very passionate and very, I tried to rationalize everything in Scientology. I was like, this doesn't make sense. How do I contextualize it to make sense? But it's, not everybody's going to do that. So there's this blind leap of faith that, we all took, and we all, I guess, to some degree or another, know how it feels to surrender to someone who abuses you, and you're going to thank them for it because they've convinced you that it's good for you, and it stacks up and it ruins your mental health. And some people, like yours truly, lose more than they, maybe expected that they would. I mean, I prepared myself to a pretty large degree, but again, I didn't really plan on, at the time, sticking around. I was just, when you have nothing left to lose, it's really hard to sit around and do nothing about it. Like, what more could they take from me? It's sort of one of those kind of situations. Do you think protests or movements or grassroots activism needs a leader? How do you find a leader? No. I think some voices will be louder than others, but creating a hierarchical structure where one person at the top dictates the movement removes autonomy from the people beneath them. I mean, I could say maybe you could have like a council of people, or like the people who are doing the most actively, like people who are impacting the group enough, should be seen as examples to follow. And obviously people come up with new ideas. The value of those ideas rest upon their efficacy, their ability to work. Scientology claims that it's the most workable religion. And famously, there's a whole department to handle when Scientology doesn't work, which is the busiest department in the entire org. So it's like in the self-sealing, cyclical compartmentalization of, or I should say cognitive dissonance, just putting it in the back and starting over from the same cycle over and over and over. In Scientology, it's, you learn something, you do bad, you learn why it was bad, you learn how to fix it, and then you do it. And it's kind of built to fail. So you're going to fail, and then you're going to get put right back in that correction stage, and then it's going to be put right back. Oh, now you have to prove that you can do it, and then you get a good job, and then you fail again because they don't work. Even if you perfectly execute an example of its workability based on the criteria of a book that has to at least once prove in a secular example that it can possibly work, that's all. You just have to prove that one small little section. In my mind, did I see that it worked? Did I convince these people that I understand their definition of workable and produce it this time? Okay, cool. Then I can go back to the position that I was in. In Scientology, you work your way up. You get lowered down to the bottom, and you have to work your way up through the condition formulas, which I've done God knows how many times. And it's for the simplest stuff. You make an agreement. If I make an agreement with my mom that I'm not going to look at her Victoria's Secret magazines, and I do, should I be considered in treason, in the condition of treason, because I broke that agreement, because I'm an enemy of the group of people who don't look at Victoria's Secret magazines? I don't think so. That's me. Like that was personally think it's a little harsh, but it's manipulation. That's all it is. And I've said this many times, the product of Scientology is a manipulated person because they will submit properly by Scientology's definition. So if people have been protesting Scientology since the 1980s, is there a way to make protesting more effective? Actually bringing about tangible change? That is the question. And if it matters enough to you, there's a dozen ways to make an apple pie. Does it taste like an apple pie? I mean, does it convince the person with the fork that they're eating an apple pie? That's the question. I think imagination, creativity, just a raw, sliver of insanity, and a very durable self-esteem. Okay, separating attacks from reasonable solutions or reasonable questions. Like, people will just get upset about anything, honestly. So I think you just have to stick through it and just have it be a part of you. I've always been curious, so I'm just curious. Like if we just look at the whole map, like not just what it looks like, but functionally, what does Scientology depend on to exist? What does Scientology give that I can take, and when I return it, if it has... I'm speaking too far. All I'm going to say is you have to be creative. You have to be passionate enough and, quite frankly, angry enough. To get it done. And whether I get it done or whether I help get it done, a couple people have left from my story. You've reached out to me, and I'm honestly, that only lit my fire more. Speaking to these people, speaking to people who have left, who don't want to be public, people who I've never met, whose family, hangs out with my family, or who gets regged or fundraised by my parents, or it's like a weird connection. But Scientology is not actually that big, so not anymore. So it's a lot smaller of a world these days. But it's about, being willing to be wrong and working until you get it right. I'm not the smartest dude in the world, but I trust that I trust that if we can be loud enough about it or decisive enough about it, the smarter people, the more focused people, the people who like a challenge, who can really develop upon their intellect, can, find even more creative ways. Knowing that there are always going to be people who are better than you at what you're trying to do is, for me, just remarkably, how do I say this? Really allows me to take a step back, and it really helped me also detach from my ego. From being in Scientology, I was so insecure, so worried about all these tiny little minuscule things about myself. I'm not going to say I'm perfect about it, but removing most of my worries by leaving Scientology, by just taking all that cosmic pressure off, all the If I do something wrong, then like anything bad I see is my responsibility. It's just it's too much pressure to put under people. People act quickly and messily when they're under pressure. You have to be really conditioned and focused to work well under pressure like that. And that's why I don't throw myself out there too often, because I tend to my emotions can get the better of me, and I can I had this Twitter beef with this dude that turned out to just be like we were both agreeing with each other on like different sides of the same argument about this whole Linkin Park thing, and I got a little hot, I got a little heated, caught me at a bad time, but at the end I was like, I think we're in agreement. Your position is sane. I'm not, this is something that can happen sometimes. But I know when to step away. I know when to step back, and it's super important, especially when leaving Scientology, to detach from the seriousness of the goal, the mission, keeping Scientology working, the policy, KSW as we call it, really emphasizes that you are either a Scientologist or you're like a no good piece of shit slacker. What was it? No group of namby-pamby panty-waist dilettantes ever did a thing about anything or something like that. But it's like you basically be like he might as well have just been like, you won't keep Scientology working. No balls. Pussy. Like, it just basically is like you're either with us or you are against us, basically, which creates the in-group and the out-group and us versus them. And then you have unlimited reasons to be upset about everything. It's because, if I just sat here and said everybody who doesn't agree with me is a Scientologist, I would probably feel like I'm surrounded by Scientologists, because I don't always say things that are, like it always sounds better in my head, and sometimes I can't even articulate when it gets too intellectual, but I try, and I take a second if I need to. But that's fine. I'd rather be a piece of shit than a Scientologist any day. Oh, being mean also, like leaving Scientology, like I was just terrified to step on anyone's toes for any reason. Anything I did would be like, even now, like, I mean, I have a good middle ground of like, I don't do things that I think are going to impact someone in a negative way. I have a very calculated measure of morality. And I think I'm pretty good at that now. But before, it was just anxiety and not talking, not saying the wrong thing, not saying anything because I didn't want to say anything. Ruined my confidence completely. Scientology destroyed my confidence entirely. So building that back up has been, well, this is the first stream I've done in a while, so not great. I'm not great at capitalizing on those viral moments. I got like a couple 100K on my on those TikToks I made about Linkin Park, but where does that go? They're on to the next thing. They're on to that adorable baby hippo, Mudang, who deserves way more attention than me. Honestly, have you seen it? It's adorable. As if around ashes. I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to say your name, but I did pick up on that Linkin Park pun. I saw it. I was in the middle of something. I didn't respond to it. I got it. It was very funny. It did make me pause, so. Moodang for president, honestly. Put that little sucker in the White House. You just got to hose him down every morning. Every press release is just him, just Moodang getting the hose, playing in the water. Deadliest animal, planet Earth, but they are muy chunky. Very adorable when they're young. The hippopotamus. Are you in communication with people who practice independent Scientology? Could independent Scientologists be of value to ending Church of Scientology? Because I did a stream about this. Let me actually just tell you which one. I think it's in the title too. If you look at my streams, I know my videos are few and far between, but my stream on the live tab, you can see. What is independent Scientology and why is it harmful? Was the name of that, and we watched some, independent Scientologists at work. It is harmful. I do not think it's positive. I do not think it's a good alternative. I think it's, it's a sort of possessive nostalgia, you could call it. People clinging to something that they fear to lose, in an irrational way. Scientology, in my opinion, and from my observation, has built into itself harmful ideology that incentivizes harmful action, right? It's not about what you believe. You can believe the Xenu stuff, you can believe whatever you want, but they more often than not act on their beliefs in very manipulative and very destructive ways, mostly destructive to other people, okay? Which is what matters, right? Very hard to criticize, very hard to spot too many people who are just self-destructive. It's usually they're doing it in a way that affects other people, that you say, oh, this guy's this guy's harmful. You know what I mean? So even just watching, there's this one independent Scientologist chick that we watch in the video, and like the most brain rotten, like it's the same. They're just doing Scientology and acting like she's trying to be her own little cult leader. Like, it was just very, very weird. And people who do independent Scientology, I feel like, are just very lost and looking for something. They're connected to the positive attachment, the positive reasons that they joined Scientology, and not disconnecting that from the facts that Scientology manipulated that purpose to use you. That, literally. So, in other words, you had a reason, you had this drive to help people, okay? That can still exist, but Scientology attaches your desire to help people with them, with Scientology and the policies. So you have to separate that. As painful and as scary as it might be, you'll be fine. You'll be all right. You'll bounce back. It'll be a rough couple weeks, couple months, whatever. You'll eventually heal. But that part of you that wants to help people is good. But, you know, when you leave Scientology, these people who do independent Scientology, when they leave, it's like, you know, I still want to audit people because, like, I see them getting FNs and I get so excited. I'm like, girl, that is how they wanted you. That is how they made you. And especially people who were never in Scientology, who do independent Scientology, that is even scarier to me, because scarier in like there's something wrong with that person. Like some kind of personality disorder, vain, like to be attracted to that kind of, those kinds of ideals and these kinds of, like, you're either like super science fiction obsessed and it just like you can kind of get into it for like the kicks, or you're like, this is the answer. like you got to be far off your rocker, man. Because without that like layer of manipulation and like positive reinforcement, which I also talk about in the video, in that live, it's a mixed bag. It's a Wild West. I think many things are harmful, but we have freedom of religion. Do you agree? Absolutely. And you're free to practice your religion as long as you're not, I don't know, protecting pedophiles. Hot take. I don't think we should protect people who damage the brains and bodies of children. That's just, that's number one. Start there. So it's these actions. Like Scientologists don't believe as children should be allowed to be kids. They're adult. They're like old thetans, old spirits in tiny bodies. So there's abuse right there, because child psychologists unanimously agree that it's better for a child to be a child. They develop better as adults if they're allowed at first to be a child. Okay, look it up. Scientology thinks all psychology and psychiatry and therapy and blah, blah, blah are the same. And they treat it as this evil psychiatrist putting you in a padded room and shocking you because you, I don't know, you're sad. But it's the reality is they take their time to make it all sound scarier than it is. And if they wanted to improve it, they would have, because they're insane in how often, well, not anymore, honestly, because of how the internet has made it scarier to come out as a Scientologist. But back in like the 90s, they used to like, picket all these different places, spread they were a lot more active before the internet, surprisingly, if you could believe that. Now a single TikTok could make a testing center close down. So it's not the religion. Again, there's a difference between a religion and a cult, and it's important to start there. Start at the difference between a religion and a cult. Okay? What characterizes a cult is the deprivation of freedoms, restrictions enforced, like there is an aspect of acted abuse. There's thoughts and beliefs, right? And then there's action. And this action will most often dictate which is a cult and which is a religion. Some older religions act like cults. This is, again, why I think, and like I stated earlier, that ripping it away from them is not how you solve it, okay? Religious people, if they're anything, are an emotional bunch. So, again, you're just that kind of violence begets more violence, because it's a kind of emotional violence to force someone to stop believing things. But like letting them know that there is a difference, and this is the difference. When you hurt people and you prevent them from seeking help, or you protect abusers within your group because you just believe that your way of thinking justifies you abusing people, you have got to go. And if you aren't willing to hold your own members accountable, that says a lot about your belief system. So this is not a one-dimensional, religions are bad because you can't prove God is real. It's like, no, that was me when I was like 9. Okay. I'm a bit more practical about it. And I think reducing the issue is only going to lead to more confusion. That's why I like to be specific. But so I definitely agree that freedom of religion, I mean, people are going to believe what they want to believe anyway. So it's really just the contrast to like when people talk about free will a lot, they're not really, it's sort of, that term has kind of lost its meaning, because biologically we are motivated heavily by our environment, our experience, our past. There's like a futuristic concept about the AI that knows everything about everyone and predicts the future, blah, blah, blah. That's not my point, but like free will is so often presented as a concept in contrast to some kind of like restriction, right? Free will as opposed to enforced, slavery is one. Being forced to be a Catholic, the Inquisition, being against the crown. These are historical systems of oppression that we can show an example of having been removed of by using an example of something like, I have free will, I can do whatever I want, I can break free of this cage. But it kind of loses its meaning when you're like, oh, well, they could leave if they want to, they have free will. It's like, well, they don't believe that they're trapped, they believe that they're doing something good. You have to describe to them the nature of how what they're doing is abusive, and then you can get somewhere. But very often Scientologists are resistant to talking about it at all, because they are obviously, I don't like to use the B word either, brainwashed. I think it's a little reductive, but even though that is what it describes what I'm talking about, but I don't like to say it, because some people who watch my streams are touchy about these things. They're very triggering subjects. Religious abuse, cult abuse. This has happened thousands of years old, this problem. So I'm not, I don't think any one stream or any one opinion is gonna, break that cycle. And if it does, I take no credit. At that level of cognitive clarity, that'd be incredible. Do I think harmful cults should be outlawed? Yes, but by detail of the reasons why they are outlawed, like why what they're doing is criminal. Again, the difference between a religion and a cult. Man, Steve, you're really giving me the questions. Honestly, I never have questions to answer. It's always like, so what are you doing? Or like, I'll answer some questions, but you're really keeping me engaged. I appreciate it. How would a congressperson, lawmaker fix the problem? I already told you that. An intermediary group who has the interest of the best interest of the community itself as a priority above the religion, because freedom in America, at least, we have something called the First Amendment, which protects you from the government infringing upon your beliefs on what you say, but it also provides no protection to any one religious group at all. Although, well, I'm not going to get into that. Although some have tried. I've seen the effects of people losing their faith and finding nothing to replace it. It's pretty heartbreaking. And it can be. But usually, what I was more concerned with than replacing Scientology was like being a human being. Having emotions that I'm allowed to like, the way I see it, whether or not it's chaos or order, actions have consequences. And I'm not going to get into too deep into my own spiritual beliefs, because I also just feel like, then I'm going to have to talk about, it's a very loaded, I don't know, I just don't want to talk about it, honestly. But like, I just wanted the pain to stop. Okay. As optimistic as that concept was, I just was depressed constantly, and most of the positive, fun-loving, funny, active guy that these people in this group knew, which I understand made it seem like a very sharp break, or a complete 180 on my personality, is because that guy, that happy guy, was fake. He doesn't exist. He isn't real. That was a construct, a collection of movie quotes and references and cultural talking points that I could sew together and give this impression that I was not rotting on the inside. And I still struggle with depression every day. And whether or not it solves itself is inconsequential, because I have to do something with my life. So, it's replacing it. If that helps you, that's fine. But your actions should speak to your intent. And that if that intent is positive, you want to do something good. If you want to join a religion, that's fine. Proselytizing will be seen to a lot as annoying. So proselytizing, meaning preaching your religion to others, can get into a gray area. So, if you leave Scientology to join the Jehovah's Witnesses to just tell me about how much better that is, I'm probably going to leave you on red. I probably won't even read it, dog. I'm sorry. But, it's like, for me, it wasn't about replacing. It was about existing and being allowed to exist naturally and as my, as myself. And it's weird, and I still have, I still have like mental illnesses like most people on the fucking planet, but I don't have to lie about them, and I don't have to rationalize, I have these tics that, hit me like energy is seeping out of the floor and space itself, and I contract my muscles, and I like it's like it locks up my whole body sometimes. But this isn't because I have ancient aliens in my body who are, whose previous trillion years of trauma is inflicting this upon me. It's because I was mentally ill, because my parents were bad at their jobs, and not just as parents, but at everything they did. Why do you think they desperately seek validation from a cult? It's pay to win. All he had to do was make millions of dollars, and he did it. My dad, and then he's set. Like, he has all the validation he'll ever need. People just cling to those kinds of people, and if he's right at home in Scientology with all the other just needlessly narcissistic and depraved millionaires who are not good people, especially at that higher level of donation, so be it. That's his choice. All right, what we got here? I kind of rambled there for a second. I watched your stream about indie Scientology. You didn't mention how indies are surprisingly passionate about ending David Miscavige's abuse so they can get back in Scientology. But again, then that's a personal thing for them. But my problem with it is that Scientology they would have to, like, I've thought about it. Like, if you want me to respect Scientology, first of all, completely expel the entire upper management right away. All of them. Gone. Okay? Especially RTC. RTC should just be abolished completely. If you believe that there's because L. Ron Hubbard made up his own science. He couldn't actually get any kind of scientific organization to validate him, so he just made up his own science, and it's based on alien space magic. I guess alien space magic is a bit of an oxymoron, but you get what I'm saying, so it's not like actually use science and disprove all the shit that doesn't work. And if you want something to work, change it so that it becomes something beneficial. Don't just ride it till it's dead. You're just on a dead horse, like slapping that thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, make it workable. But no, that would be too much, because this dead science fiction author said he was pretty sure that was the only way anyone's ever going to feel better about anything. And look where we are. So, let me tell you. But that's all I have to say about independent Scientologists. It's just a waste. Or taking, that's a great point. Or taking people's rights away. Like, believe whatever you want, but don't harm me or take away my rights. But most religious people vote against basic human rights for everyone. Right. But and despite the nuance of these rights being your rights, because we've discovered that when you remove them, it causes harm, right? They don't think of it like that. Harm is a part of life. Suffering is a part of life. You're either it's mostly about the afterlife, right? It's not really something that you're able to prove until you're dead. So from that point of view, you're kind of just always talking about the afterlife or the end of the world, or this thing, this carrot that's dangled in front of you. Like for Scientology, they want to clear the planet, okay? And everyone needs to become OT. And there's a point to which there will be a certain amount of people that go OT that eventually it'll cascade, and it'll be a ripple effect that makes everyone go OT. And it'll be easier. But that hasn't happened because Scientology doesn't work. But to them, it's because the SPs are working overtime. People like me, who is an agent of psychiatry or whatever the fuck they believe I'm doing this for, it's like, if they wanted to know, they could talk to me. But they have definitions. They have all these books written by this guy who they trust unavowedly. There was a point in my life where my mom told me something. Like after I had this, after I decided I was going to take a break from Scientology, I was about 23, 24. I was living with my parents. It was during COVID. Because I had moved up from Atlanta. And then COVID, so I was out of work, and I was, I had no money, so I was just living with my parents. And my mom said something to me. And it wasn't until then, because I had just done all this Scientology training, that I realized she's never given me a piece of original advice in her life. It's all, and it just like strung together this pattern of all these like words of wisdom, these unhelpful like nuggets that she thought were helpful. And I was like, oh, she's probably been around the block. But no, she's just parroting Scientology to me like I haven't already read all this shit. But it wasn't until then that I realized, wow, she just isn't interested in giving me her opinion. I know now who my mom is. But like as a person. But this isn't about her as much as she'd love it to be. But taking people's rights away, removing the option of consent. Like, if you are allowed to have your religious beliefs, other people are allowed to not have those beliefs. And it works both ways. You know? But when you tread over each other, it's tricky, you know? Especially when the majority of people aren't in this religion and you're saying that this is the right way, and people are like, we've actually known for a long time that this is not a good thing. And they're like, whoa, these are my rights. These are my religious freedoms. It's like, your religious freedom should not be defined by taking away another person's freedom. And if it is, you're in a cult, big dog. Sorry. Or you are acting cultic, right? You are treating your beliefs or using your beliefs to flex power on other people, right? So, and then that's just your thing. And there are bad actors in perfectly good, perfectly fine places. But it's when you remove the nuance, you remove the details and the specifics, that's where I feel like we become unproductive. The ontological shock of finding out we don't have free will. Yeah, and it's like, and it's not that bad. It's like, oh no, I can't do what I want. It's like, no, you can do whatever you want. Just, it's not like you're not unhinged from the Matrix or whatever the fuck. Like, you're still a dude. And when you, and you'll notice the most confident, arrogant people usually use this concept of free will as an excuse to, like, exert dominance or their own, exert themselves over top of other people who they consider like NPCs or whatever, which, you know, a person's lack of development or experience or education does not dictate their worth, in my opinion. All human beings have an inherent value. You do lose that value in my eyes when you start abusing people, or protecting abusers. You know, it gets a little fishy, it gets a little dicey there, but, you know, I'm not the president. A trillion years of trauma has a nice ring to it. I didn't write the books. You know, he could have said anything else, but he, you know. The proof that you are a good person, in my opinion, is that you continue to show up and share your life, thoughts, and memories. I think it's more like, I feel like I've already cried on, you know, on camera. I've already, the one thing I wanted to do more than anything was feel and be allowed to feel these emotions. And when the feelings came out, you know, it's like authentic. I'm not saying I'm like the best guy, you know. My coping mechanisms could be better, sure, but I don't actively hurt people for my own personal benefit, because I don't think that's chill. I think that when you make that okay, it corrupts you. It like literally removes the parts of your brain and dulls the parts of your brain that think logically. Because logically, if I can obtain, you know, satisfaction without hurting someone, then it's possible. Oh, he said it. He said it, not me. Oh, it was him. Shoot me. Sue me. Dead in the street. You know? You don't have to hurt people, but people, you know, different brains, different patterns, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I just prefer to try my best not to be a dick. So, and obviously you and I are friends, so I'm not, you know, I think Scientology is closer to black magic. People definitely believe in black magic. You know what's crazy is all from the outside, people are like, oh, it's demonic. There's demons. But like when you're in Scientology, and especially when you grow up in Scientology, you are so far removed from other religions. In Scientology, other religions are made up. Point blank, period. You are L. Ron Hubbard has lectures where he talks about how there is no Jesus, there is no heaven, there is no hell, there is just thetans in chains, and he does his whole little, linguistic dance, where he says a bunch of nonsense and tells a bunch of stories and pretends he's an academic. It's like, but there's no Satan, there's no Satanism. So like from my perspective, there's a lot of sci-fi influences, and there's a lot of like, someone who would have had maybe a more traditional religious background, with Christianity or Catholicism or what have you. But like, black magic is demonic. Black magic is the dark side. Black hat magic is not something good people should fuck. I just think don't be an asshole. And if you have to like do blood sacrifices or blood rituals to like get what you want, you're down bad. Like if I thought like you're down bad. I personally wouldn't, because obviously people are crazy. Anyone can also write anything on the internet, so like finding spells and shit is like, I did some research on this when I was looking into this story I wanted to write, and I found that it's like you'll get like 30 different people talking about the same thing, and they'll just change so many details that it's like wholly ambiguous, like if there was ever an original story at all. And then all we have is and then people were saying like, oh, it's because the Library of Alexandria was burnt to the ground. Apparently we have less evidence that even happened than we do that it did, which blew my mind, because all the movies I watched said that the Library of Alexandria was like, that was a whole big deal. But apparently it was like, it's like less provable the more we look into it. My point is, I'm not interested in fantasy when it comes to living my life. But it's just exhausting, Why stress yourself out like that? Being afraid of the devil? I don't know. LRH was naval intelligence. All naval intelligence agencies compete against each other. I don't think LRH was naval intelligence. I'm pretty sure he was just like, he had his own ship. I don't think he was actually involved, because his military record is public now, and he was a disgraced ship captain. Lied about his injuries, and he made a lot of shit up. And we get into this crossover between like cults and true crime, where like people are very want everything to be connected, and that's great, but everything is already connected. Okay, we're all people just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. I just think it's silly to reduce it to something you can't ever figure out. Like if it was black magic, okay, so how does that? I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm saying like, if someone says it's the demons, it's demonic, he's doing blood magic because he used to hang out with Alexander Crowley or whatever, or I think that's his name, Crowley, demon guy, devil guy. Who cares at this point? They're both, from my knowledge, bad dudes. So what the fuck does it matter? the abuse that's happening right now and the abuse that's going to happen tomorrow is all I really care about. And that's mostly where I'd like to put my energy. If I encounter a demon or a succubus, best believe I'll let you know. But I won't be conjuring anytime soon. Also, there was this TikTok I think I saw a while back where like this guy tried to conjure a succubus, and that led me down like a rabbit hole of like people who like do witchcraft, and you know, most of the dudes who are conjuring succubi are incels who do not succeed at this. So you know, it's a really fantastic idea, and I'm it's yeah, it's psyche fracturing. That's where the crossover is, and what's happening now in Scientology. I mean, you have this agency you have this, not agency, not like a group, like I mean the want to do something, right? The giving people agency, like this body of knowledge that's giving people agency to do what they're doing in Scientology, and they're being held back because the leader knows that he's lying and corrupt, and he, like David Miscavige, totally knows what he's doing, but he has a free fucking ride. He's a cult leader. He doesn't have to make anything new. He has to revise it every couple years, and it's a cash cow. People will leave, and new impressionable people will join, and he'll continue the cycle as long as it benefits him, as long as he can run, and as long as they can avoid legal process. You want to talk to me about religious freedom? Is it within your religious freedom to avoid process servers in every country on the planet? Because let me tell you, David Miscavige is like the world's most like transparent cult leader, and a lot of people who don't see that will, but not everyone. You know, and again, you can't rip it away from him. You have to like, for example, Scientology is supposed to incentivize you to do good things in the world, right? But the wording and the actual practice of it is actually very selfish. It's very self-centered efforts. Everything you're doing is to improve you, not to like every time you give someone Scientology, that benefit is on you for spreading Scientology. It's for your dissemination successes, right? It's not that whether that person does well or not is inconsequential. But I've seen a lot of people who were very close to me when I was growing up, disappear off the face of the earth. Whether they're just in obscurity, I have no fucking idea, because they don't want anything to do with being public, period. You know? And I think about them all the time. And, you know, something is possible. Something is on the tip of my tongue. And I feel like if enough creative people are challenged to find unique and effective ways to impinge upon Scientologists in an honest and rational way, we're going to have a better success at flipping the book, right? None of it should be tax exempt. Well, yeah, because they have you know, if you're saying that about religion, religions have a history of abuse, which is why we've classified a cult, which is why there are more cults being created, and more cults being classified as cults because we have a definition of what the difference is between religious belief and religious abuse, which I think is the nuance that really, it just cannot be more fundamental, you know? Homunculus moonchild? What the hell? I love those TikToks where it's like, I found homunculus. I'm keeping him in my closet. I've named him Chester. Ugh. Well, Chester, because it's a bit of a... That was just... His name isn't Chester. That was just on the brain because of earlier. Anyone can start a cult, but it takes a while to culture and start a religion. It's based on what they agree, and it's real, and it's important. Yeah, and whether you start... Like, it all kind of sounds the same, but again, it's what you do, right? If I said tomorrow that this is my new religion, and it's based on these principles of just like believing people are good and helping them because you should care because we're all human beings. And I went out and I was like getting people to do these good things, and like, that'd be great. But not very often is a religion created that way, or a cult especially, because not many religions are created at all these days. They're mostly cults because the person at the top has to enforce his belief, and this can often be demonstrated in very abusive ways. Do I follow politics? As much as I can, yeah. As an adult, you just kind of... It's part of nature. And I don't, like, think of politics as, like, a trivial thing. I just think it's, like... I don't think of it as, like, very divisive to be interested in politics. I think you can stir up some shit by talking about politics, but it's whatever. That's why I'm not a political channel. I'll leave that to Hassan Piker. All DM has to do is be authoritarian and put on an air of certainty. Nothing more, literally. And apparently beat the shit out of people because he has a history of doing that as well. Oh, okay, I missed this. Elrich was a full-blown liar. Oh, okay, he later... Oh, Elysia, I'm missing your original text. Later he took that child. What child? Homunculus moonchild. Oh, I don't know what that... Is that a thing? I thought he was memeing on me. Is homunculus moonchild a real thing? That's the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard, I'm not gonna lie. Bro, spelling this is gonna be a challenge. Homunculus. From the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? That's the first response. Yeah, I don't know if I'm reading this correctly. I think I got lost in the chat. Oh, shit. Oh, shoot. Gosh darn it. There's Cuba until his wife chop her and put her in the ocean. Okay. That kind of, I feel like contextually, Elysia, that one kind of comes out of nowhere. Maybe I'm missing some context there. I imagine it must be difficult for ex-Scientologists to trust any spiritual organization. Well, a friend of mine who left Scientology found Jesus. And although he wasn't born into it, he was exposed to quite a bit. We probably had less in common at that point, but, I don't wish him you know, I wish him well. And I think it's a personal thing. I think like I look for patterns in certain types of people, like certain like sort of like archetypes, but I think it's like a spectrum of experience and consequences. And because we are all human, we have it within our we have very common reactions to things. We have common like we have diagnoses that we can all be diagnosed with, right? Because we all share immune systems. We're all you know what I mean? Like, because we're all human, a lot of the same results will transpire. No matter where we are on the planet, we all come from the same. I mean, I'm speaking from someone who believes in evidence-based science and evolution and things of that sort. So the common consensus. So we're all from the same place. So I think it's you just have to understand the individual and like what they were looking for in the first place. But again, I'm as hard as it is to prove that, and I see you, you're saying we have a shared consciousness. I've thought about that, but as hard as it is to prove that we communicate with each other telepathically, it doesn't rule out an eventual and I'm speaking from a sort of, I guess, unproven standpoint here. But it doesn't mean that it won't eventually be provable, right? I don't know how many of y'all have done mushrooms, but the first time I did mushrooms, I got more from it in, what was it, 5-6 hours than I ever saw in Scientology in my 24 years combined. All these hopes and all these, you're going to see this power, you're going to be able to use it, just being there and letting my ego die and watching, I was sitting on a field. I took 5 grams, which was not what I meant to do, but apparently that's a heroic dose. And let me tell you, whatever I saw is not was a reflection, obviously, I understand, of my own insecurities, blah, blah, blah. It untethers you from these patterns you've been living in. So I remember sitting, so my girlfriend took a lot less, and we were doing it together. So she was on the swing having a fun time. There was this neighborhood, our apartment complex had a swing set. So she was on the swings. I was just sitting on the grass, being blasted with this, I was just seeing this cosmic energy that was radiating from the sun and washing over me, and the wind was crazy. And I was seeing more in seconds that I had never even imagined possible in Scientology. There was this one point, didn't expect I'd be talking about this here. I thought eventually. I always think I have to have a separate video for every topic, but since we're here, there was this very specific point where I realized after taking them that it's like I was standing on a dock, and suddenly the dock was moving, and I realized I had stepped onto the boat, and I turned, I looked back, and all my luggage was still on the dock, and I was just on the ride. And it really made my empathy and my like a care and attentiveness of other people like just skyrocket. I was just like, I mean, the concepts that I pondered and the things that I felt and I saw, and I did see like a connectedness. I don't think that proves that I can telepathically communicate with other people. I think I'm resistant to that because Scientology believes that in a way that's like really like not chill. So, when I took it, I was like, this is too much. This is too much. This is too much. Oh no, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then I was doing it. And we went outside. My girlfriend was like, let's go for a walk. Let's go outside. We got to go outside. And I was like, okay. So we left. We went outside. It was a beautiful day. I was just really worried that I was going to fuck up her trip. And she took so much less. She was just feeling good. I was losing my shit. And I was just so worried about her. I was like, are you okay? Are you doing fine? Are you doing good? And then I was just like, I was looking at the trees and I felt like the heartbeat of nature. And it was just like pulsing. And I was like, how they look at they have those pictures of like veins next to like river formations and rock formations. And it's like, it's all the same. It was kind of like that, but on like a really, visual level. And I don't like to hallucinate. I've never like seen people who weren't there or like seen ghosts. So it never happened to me. A friend of mine in high school was like, I see ghosts in the room right now with us. And I'm like, oh no, that sucks. I just don't think ghosts give a shit about me. I think we just pass each other. If there are even, I don't know. That's not what we're talking about. My point is like, when I did see shit, it was like, wow. Yeah. We are all the same. I think we're all connected in a literal way, but not in like a metaphysical fantasy way, I like to think of life as evolving the way it intended, whether we are the perfect example or not. I think it's just all going to happen the way it was intended, because it is happening and because it started, like we evolved from mud to walk on land, and obviously not mud. Don't be that guy. We're not actually from mud. I get it. But like, we're one step of the process. And I think we should all get the fuck over ourselves and focus on the here and now, so that, because we're going to do that anyway. The people who can't leave the past won't. In every moment you can make a decision to like be a good person. Every second of every day. And that's what I got from it. And I cared so much more about people after that experience. And the concept of ego death, like, really fucking clicked. And so it was crazy, especially because like mushrooms are seen as this like terrible, horrible, addictive, awful, psychosis-inducing thing, which, if you are prone to like schizophrenia, if you are like, there's like a medical reason why people lose their minds after doing hallucinogens. It's not just like built in. But like my parents would like make me think that this was like some kind of inevitability. Like my mom used to like talk about how, porn is like, it's a sliding scale. Everyone who watches porn becomes a pedophile, and it like literally traumatized me as a child. And she made me feel terrible about myself for being attracted to women. And I was just, so I didn't talk to many women when I was a kid because I was terrified. Even though I was a child, I was a literal child. And all I was doing was looking at adult women in magazines and printing off the home screen of Playboy.com to keep under my pillow because, you know, it's an early bloomer. The point is, like, I don't like to reduce concepts beyond their usefulness. And for as much as Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard specifically say that broadly generalizing is like an SP trait, that's all Scientologists fucking do. And it's the common, yeah, and like it's where we connect that I think is important. It's what we need. We all sleep, we all eat, we all need shelter, you know. We all need medicine at some point, you know. But I'm not an expert on all that, you know. I am literally a product. I am a prime product of Scientology and a little bit of an assist from my autism, which, you know, do you think you can have a ego death without psychedelics? I have no fucking idea. I think you have to. Some people I know spark empathy and ego death with like traumatic experiences or like watching someone die. I think we should probably come with like there shouldn't answer to how to learn. What's the best way to learn? I don't think it should be trauma. So that's really all I have to say about that. But it's scary, you know. It can be scary. Psychedelics can be kind of be scary. But my point is that like it's not about all religions. It's not about, you know, demons or whatever. It's about people hurting people. And from my observation, cults, as defined by people who study and observe these people and talk to people who have left the cult and who, you know, why they left the cult. It's like cults harm everyone. And I say that all the time. Cults harm everyone. You know, it's very simple to me. I've been standing. How long has this stream been going on? I don't even know how long the stream has been on. But I've been standing for most of this. 2.5 hours I've been standing, guys. My back has never felt better. Although I still have to like stretch every morning because I've been rigid for a long time. Scientology destroys your mobility if you're not working out every single day. Ass crack of dawn, let me tell you, because you're just sitting constantly, hours and hours and hours. Talk about, you know, talk about like self-improvement. There's a fan underneath me. I get very hot in this room doing this. Especially when I'm gaming, because good Lord, my computer, it can run games fine. I can play most games, but streaming is another demon. But yeah, I think I'll wrap it up at the 3-hour mark. I think that's solid. I usually do 4, but it's like it's not. I'm not in it. I'm not in that today. Ego death is always temporary. Medication can trigger ego death experiences more extreme than others. Yeah, I mean, do you think previous activists against Scientology made mistakes? Why don't you think they were successful? I think everybody makes mistakes. But I'm not going to talk about the drama. Okay? I stopped when I knew it was just a cycle. But everybody makes mistakes. But I think again, it's what you do now. It's what you do next that you know, that matters. And not doing any bruh. Okay. And I guess in response, not doing any drugs that will literally degrade your body from the inside out or destroy your brain chemistry irreparably. Don't do that. Okay? I don't fuck with that. How do you break the cycle of drama? By focusing on the goal. Again, people are very passionate about this, and I don't really feel like they know. They don't have, like, I feel like people in the anti-Scientology community don't really have a lot of things that they can do in the moment. They don't feel like they have any tools to actually confront Scientology themselves. So, educating yourself is really important. Focusing on the goal and not on the bumps along the way. And it's not my job to police other people's behavior, just to focus on what I have to do, about what I'm passionate about. I think it's there's no one perfect thing that's going to destroy Scientology. Scientology is destroying itself better than anyone outside of the cult will ever do. Although we can just nudge it. We can just push it just off the edge. We can just nudge it just right there. It's right on the edge. It's right on the edge. And I think it takes thinking. I think it takes listening. And I think it takes, above all things, patience, because you can very easily, I believe violence begets violence. So as evil as Scientology is, you will always find an equally violent or hateful response in any hate that you throw their way. I think it's there are smarter ways to go about it. Have I protested non-Scientology stuff? I really haven't been out for long enough. I mean, I again share. You weren't here for the beginning, I don't think, but I actively use Twitter. I mean, I'm really just trying to pick up the pieces of my own life, my own past. So I think I'm doing what I can. I'm doing the best that I can, and I stick up for my opinions, and I stick up for other people's opinions if I feel they're valid. I find myself trying to go out of my way to, if I see I'm a small creator. If I see other small creators who don't have a lot of traction, especially on TikTok, who say something really that I think is valuable, I'll repost it. And I'll, I have about 146K, I think. And even on Twitter, I try to amplify voices. I mean, I don't have a big platform, but I don't like. I spent a lot of my life not saying what's on my mind, and I think I'm trying to just get better at doing that. And this is a great outlet for that, because I can kind of go on a roll with Scientology and break it down, but once I'm here, it's like, why? Either I'm gonna talk, either I can talk about it, or I don't want to talk about it. It's more so knowing what I don't want to talk about. And what do I think of the passionate Scientologists on Twitter? Yeah, there's not many, not anymore. It's just a collection of bot accounts and like the usual suspects who will just block anyone. I can't tell you how many Scientologists I've gotten into beefs with on Twitter who literally cannot stay in a conversation with me for more than like 5 minutes. Like it's either like the Scientologist trolls who will just go for personal attacks and just like lie, like straight up, and like require this exuberant demonstration of, of morality that they themselves don't even know how to define. It's just literally the purest definition of trolling. And then there's the other who, even whether they mean well or not, Scientology invokes a very negative attitude about people who are negative or critical about Scientology. So it's like a, and I'll get better at it, I'm sure, as time goes by, but it's kind of like this. You're talking to a brick wall, You have to know what to say, and me just having my experience isn't enough for them. So when I give them a good point, they block me. It's never enough. It's never enough to spark empathy, because, well, they shouldn't have empathy. They should be effective, or they, shouldn't let other people's dramatizations of their banks get in the way of your goodwill mission to clear all of mankind, blah, 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 blah. So it's a dicey one, but for the most part, I feel like it's kind of solving itself. Yeah, no one demonstrates more of a lack of confront than Scientologists. Let me tell you, and that's honestly, sometimes that's the most annoying part, is that they're so fucking hypocritical every single time. Like, every policy that I can be like, doesn't the ethics book say this? They're like, no, but usually they don't even make it that far in the conversation. I have yet to find a Scientologist who will continue a conversation with me to a solid resolution, because to them, if they can't shatter, then their efforts mean nothing. If they just get insecure and run away, it's like, and then there's the whole well, you should confront and shatter, but you shouldn't try to defend Scientology, because then you open the void, and the void pulls in all the bullshit, whatever he says in PTSSP course. But it's like when the hypocrisy is that blatant, I know you, and we learned the same shit roughly the same time, and you're like I watched you read that policy, and you're now gonna act like you don't have to apply it, but you're supposed to be the good Scientologist here. It's like the Wild West of confront and shatter. It's like, well, who's the quicker draw? And I can pretend to not have these values of, as long as I'm defending Scientology. It's like, no, you're just, well, I'm not gonna say you're dumb, but you're naively hypocritical in this moment. I'm gonna tell you, it's not really working well in your favor. Using people's, when people start to, if you ever argue with a Scientologist and they start attacking you personally, you realize they're about to block you. They're on the edge. Because that's mostly what they have. They don't have a way to defend Scientology, because it's not about, they're not doing these great things for humanity. They did something that you feel from your perspective is good for you. So that's all you can say. And when they say it's selfish, you can't defend that. I wrote this whole thing. I'll bring it up next time, but I wrote this whole thing about David Miscavige. If you're a Scientologist, and I'm talking to Scientologists right now, David Miscavige has prevented you from defending yourself to the point where Scientology is literally a laughing stock. It's either hilarious to some people in how absurd it is, or it is dangerous, and you can't even defend yourself, and you won't. Because talking to SPs, if you can't talk to anyone outside your religion, you're not going to go very far. If you can't have a conversation without this emotional zeal that spews out in endless insecurity and personal attacks. You don't even understand psychology. You are not permitted the tools that would benefit you in your arguments. And you never learn anything new. And you never go anywhere fast. And you're always in fucking debt. Or you're rich and you're just giving them money because they applaud you and give you trophies. My parents received fucking Ark of the Covenant level crates to their house that have these giant golden trophy globes in it. And like they don't even want them because there's nowhere to put them. I mean, I'm sure they keep them for sure. But like it's just so pathetic. It's like and obviously I have the benefit of having already be on the other end of this rationale. So I've done the work already to get here. But it's still just like, you don't even want to try. You don't even want to make a statement. You have to run everything by your daddy, David Miscavige. You have to run everything by him. And that doesn't seem like a red flag to you. You let one guy be the sole, like he is, and him by ignoring the controversy and by suing people. I learned that the it's crazy. It's like, it's so pathetic and self-defeating. No wonder these people are fucking depressed. Okay? And they have to stay in this wonderful land of, oh, I can't just gonna stay in session and everything will be fine. I'll stay in session, everything will be fine. I'll go in session, I'll go on course and pretend everything's fine. I won't read the news. I won't talk to him. Oh, he's a little critical. He's a little, J&D, so I can't really talk to him. He doesn't really take it seriously. So I'll just stay in my own little thing. It's like, that's what you look like, dog. That is the actual process of your thinking from the outside. So have some balls, have some courage to tell David Miscavige to go fuck himself. Because did he write all this shit? I forgot. Who wrote this? Was it you? Was it David Miscavige? Have some integrity. If you're going to be an asshole, at least have some balls. You know what I'm saying? Jesus. That's what I'm saying. I just let I can get hot on this. I'm just saying, like, it's sad. What was I going to say? Somebody reminded me of something. Do I support an economic boycott against all practicing Scientologists? Unequivocally. Right here? You and me. 100%. I support a boycott. An economic boycott of all practicing Scientologists. You want to know why? Because you don't deserve... They do not deserve any more money. Okay? Because every dollar they use, they just spend on avoiding legal proceedings. Oh, that reminds me. What I was going to say. I recently found out, because when I left Scientology and I made the first TikTok where, I was just in a hole. I didn't talk to anyone. I wasn't doing anything. I was just going through it, brother. Let me tell you. And it ended up like I lost my job because I was working for my dad, and he only hires people who are positive about Scientology or are Scientologists. So I was just phased out, and I didn't have a job, so I couldn't afford to get a divorce because I was also going through a divorce because my ex was writing reports on all of my personal thoughts to Scientology and my parents, which was fun. So I totally destroyed my any sense of trust, and so I couldn't afford to get divorced. And then a lawyer contacted me to take over the divorce on her behalf. And very recently, I learned that this very same lawyer, the Brock Group of Australia, of Sydney, Australia, I think it's Sydney, maybe Sydney or Melbourne, was used by Scientology to threaten a cult survivor like meeting, like a support group for cult survivors who suffered trauma, and they were like threatening these people. And I'm like, so Scientology footed the bill for my divorce. Thanks. I appreciate it. That was a real money. It was a real penny saver. So appreciate that. Saw that coming from a mile away too. They would not have let her stay married to me, which is fine because I told her I wanted a divorce. And she was like, but can't we get Scientology marriage counseling first? And I was like, crying on the phone, being like, I cannot go back there. I cannot sit in another chair and have them put these fucking cans in my hands. And she didn't give a shit. So Scientology paid for my divorce. Hell, that should have been the name of this whole stream. Although it would have probably contextually been a little confusing. Maybe you should make more short content about economic boycott and say the reasons why. Now, a general one, that's a good idea. I have been doing this on TikTok. I do make TikToks when I feel like when I find these people out. I've exposed 2 people so far for being Scientologists, and I know of a lot of the people, like, they have to be famous enough for people to really give a shit, honestly. They have to be, like, well-known enough to actually get people's attention, and that's very frustrating. But that's not a bad idea. I'll look into that. I mean, that alone is gonna sit in my head, and it'll develop on its own. So maybe I'll make some TikToks, repost them on YouTube like I do. So out of context, people just have a wildly... TikTok and YouTube are 2 completely different beasts. But that's a good idea. I'll do that. But it's if I could summarize my issues here, I think Scientology, I feel like this is how I end every fucking thing. I could just say goodbye, but I have a minute left. So I think it's about looking at what we've been doing and where it hasn't worked, and constantly thinking of new ways, putting a filter on it. Who will this harm if I do this? How will it harm them? And then using that as a barometer for pulling back. You don't want to just do anything, because then you can still hurt people if you think you're doing a good thing. It's like you're fighting fire with lava, and it's just gonna create more burning. But like, that was so stupid. What you get what I'm trying to say though? Like, you gotta. I'd like to challenge people to come up with unique solutions to, like, nuanced solutions to actually combat like the real why, the real reasons that Scientology is harmful, and why it can't be why it hasn't been solved. And it's like, what are we solving? It's like, look at the power structure. There's so much you have to know to like even contextualize it. But like, no one's going to be the guy or, the person who destroyed Scientology single-handedly. And I think it's incredibly selfish and incredibly I would think dangerous to like put that on yourself, because not only is it like stress on you, but it's like you want the glory from just do something, like, yeah, write to your senator. A lot of senators don't listen because you're not talking to them face to face. If I could talk to a senator face to face, trust me, I would tell them exactly what I'm telling you here, maybe worded differently, maybe structured towards their interests. How many back taxes will Scientology be paying the government once their tax exempt status is removed? It's like, it's could one person be a spiritual idea creator but not a leader? Sure, but again, it depends on the context of the actions and the beliefs. Like the makeup of the makeup of the group and what they produce, I think, is more important than a leader. A body of knowledge on its own, if it is effective, if it is like if it invokes righteousness and actually produces good in the world that we're all living in, it shouldn't need a leader. Obviously, people are going to idealize, but that's something we cannot control. But we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens. I'm planning another stream, but we all know how that goes. So I'm going to just make sure, just keep a lookout. I actually just got this other little part-time gig I have to do, which is fine. It'll take a little bit of my time, but honestly, not that much time. So I plan to stream more because nothing matters, and I can just get on here and yap, and I think the more I do it, the more people will actually care. Whether or not it's about Scientology, I'm pretty sure it's just, it is what it is. If I wanted to organically create a whole new community based on my personal interests, which sounds exhausting, that's its own thing. But for now, I'm going to stay the course. And I appreciate everyone who's here, who stayed and watched, everyone who just popped in, everyone who's watching at home after who's watching the VOD. I appreciate you. If you weren't there, I wouldn't be here. So thank you. And appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Hope to see y'all soon.